Welcome to my presentation, Relearning How to Tend to Our Garden of Communication. This is a presentation for my capstone project for the 2-year-long program called Masters of Science in Engineering, Sustainability and Health. I asked the question, how do we nurture caring and cooperative social fields to heal our planet as globally distributed changemakers? When I say changemakers, I'm thinking about my community of radical engineers and activists and organizers, and I'm also thinking of this program's community, which was distributed all over the globe, from Lillian, who was in Kenya doing a project on waste repurposing among poverty and her community, to people all over the US doing things in the water justice field and urban food justice. And because we were doing so many different things, the question arose, how can we support each other and how can we communicate with each other about creating that systemic change that we seek to bring forth? Along the way of this project, I created a bunch of design artifacts, thought about communication spaces and interfaces, and what really informed this work was my communication and interview style design process, which was based on people in my program and with several experts and friends. And then I went on to create a prototype to code something that could resemble the abstract ideas. So starting abstract, I thought a lot about plants and about how they share nutrients and how plants could resemble projects, and projects kind of arise among people tending to a garden. So people are kind of taking care of a garden together and things come out of the garden. So when I interviewed these 15 to 20 people, depending on the time space you think about, the principles emerged of that people before work, that people want to sense each other as human beings and not just a project work, that they want to support each other in more ways than just collaborating on projects, but they also really want to share offers and opportunities for working together on systemic change. So a really big insight that emerged is kind of this slide, which is a lot of text, but I'm going to go over it quickly. So people come together and then they sense that they want to talk to each other, and then they think about how they want to talk to each other and sense each other through certain ways of connecting. And that can be in a practice of coming together and asking each other questions. And that thing can be also visualized, but then out of that communication, action arises. So the really important part here is that the community comes together and thinks about communication. So the community learns how to maintain itself and adapt over time, so they can continue to communicate effectively. With respect to my community, what came up a lot is that we kind of think about it as a living room. And this design insight really came from interviews where it came up again during collaborative calls, that people kind of want to think about it as a living room because there are different ways to communicate. Sometimes we want to have this red telephone for the really important call. And sometimes we want to have a fridge to just put in our old ideas and want to take them out later if we ever think that the old stuff in the freezer is important for a conversation that we're having now. So there's so many different ways to communicate and to kind of encapsulate that ecosystem. It helps to have a physical space for it. And then when we think more about physical space and actually the communications we want to have, we're going into the complex systems world, because we're thinking about trans-disciplinary cooperation. And what really helps in the complex systems world, where things aren't linear and just one arrow to an arrow, let's think about zooming out the big picture. And complex systems can get really complex. This is an example of my food justice course. So I thought a lot about how can we streamline communication and give that complex communication a space to exist in. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about it in real life, but it means to like help the system to sense itself not only through talking but also through visuals. And maybe we can offer something to each other or share different forms of being with each other. So here we're thinking about the offerings that people have with respect to their projects and how they could support each other. So people can share what they're currently working on or what they've been thinking about. And what they share is something that the community thinks about. Like, what do we want to know about each other? And in this case, it's the project work and how they could work with each other and facilitate each other's growth and success with respect to their collectively shared aspirations. So again, in the middle is kind of the garden. The green things could be plants, and on the outside it's the people watering the plants. But the people can also take care of the people, which is not depicted in this visual so much. And then people can sense how they're doing and what challenges are happening. And then maybe they could like react to the rage and say, oh, I'm also feeling this, you know. So you like add on to that image by sharing a little story about it. And a lot of this is really embedded in sharing the context so people can understand more than just one little bit. And this interface can get really complex, but when you code something, it needs to like boil down to something really simple. So we started to like code, and my friend Odalis helped me a lot with this. If we want to sense the community, we created this really simple prototype where this representation is linked to Google Survey, and like in the middle there's a bunch of different questions about like what projects people have been working on, what are you feeling currently, and then outside are the people. And so you can kind of explore your community. But my project is kind of about leveraging the underused resource of visuals and giving communication that visual structure to streamline the flow of communication, because very often in our linear chat interfaces we lose track and sight of what's really going on. And another really important part is that we want to focus on people and not just the projects they create. So there's always a certain focus on people and how they relate to their project and what people are already doing the work to build movement towards the projects we want to see to continue. So this is not just about ideating new projects all over the place. This is about like reflecting on what's already working, what's already here, what are the emotions that we're feeling, and there's obviously much more to this. I hope this makes sense. And this is just a little glimpse into much bigger visions, but I had to cut the time for making a presentation or continuing to get inspired by even more grand, big ideas. I hope this all makes sense. Thank you for watching. And if you want to reach out to me, I would appreciate it. Thank you.